What is weird colors, fell from space, and corrupts all around it? This guy. Let's speculate on it. Hey everyone! The color Out of Space is one of racist and writer H.P. Lovecraft's finest creations. An alien entity made of mysterious colors unlike any seen on Earth that has equally weird effects on the world around it. So speculating on its biology will be a doozy, to say the least. Please consider coloring in those like and subscribe buttons if you like this video, or check some related ones. And now, without further ado, let's get to the spookiness. The year was 1882. A meteorite fell from the sky in the farmlands of Massachusetts, USA. A mere year later, the area was nothing but a grey, lifeless expanse of land. The couple that owned that farm and their 3 sons had vanished, as had all their animals and most plant life in the area. In 2019, a similar event occurred, at a time when studying and documenting this phenomenon was much easier. As our researchers inspected the meteorite, they found an entity that was termed by its original witnesses as being nothing more than a color that infected everything around it. This entity was, in fact, an alien microorganism, which we came to name as Xenochroma holobora. Carbon-based, like life on our planet, which explains how it was able to so efficiently feed on it. While its morphology may seem similar to some organisms from our planet, this is merely a result of its simple form having very similar needs. A membrane that keeps the in and out separate, internal functional complexes, and small cilia that allow it to move. However, this organism possesses a unique, to use an analogous term, organelle, which is constantly shifting electrons to produce high amounts of photons, which are greatly agitated to be expelled as gamma rays. As we would learn upon observations of this organism on Earth, the ionization of air molecules caused by this radiation would produce a bright magenta coloration. This organism first arrived on our planet in what seemed to be a meteorite, actually a cocoon, inside which it can travel through space, through a mechanism we will detail in a moment. This cocoon is gradually formed as the organism travels through space, as the constant release of gamma energy ionizes residual matter around it, altering its charge and causing it to coalesce around the organism, forming a mineral lattice similar in composition and structure to many types of chlorides. Once this cocoon passes through an area rich in polar liquid matter, such as water, this liquid will be absorbed by the lattice, not only dissolving the mineral structure that forms it, but also shielding the radiation produced by the color and halting its propulsion. By gravity alone, the cocoon will be attracted towards the nearest mass, the most likely source of this liquid matter. This is what happened with our planet's atmosphere, and the water present in the air released them into their new environment. The individual microorganisms forming this colony will then bond to the liquid molecules, gathering them around themselves using their cilia, as their tiny hair-like filaments will take advantage of the surface tension to hold a layer of liquid together. Thus, they will enter a dispersive stage, becoming temporarily safe due to the isolation of the liquid around them, using this liquid medium to disperse across their newfound environment in order to reach the next stop in its life cycle, sources of carbon, which this organism would use to replicate. With carbon being one of the most common elements in the universe, this is a sensible strategy, and the organism had a really easy time doing this on our planet. By dispersing through water, Xenochroma had no issues entering animals as they drank, and plants as they absorbed it through their roots. Once these microorganisms have invaded a living being, they will passively use small doses of gamma radiation to alter life around itself, promoting altered, uncontrolled cellular growth of its host, A mix of DNA damage and cancerous growth would produce a slow but constant alteration to the host's morphology and physiology, and given the high levels of energy carried by gamma rays, few forms of life in the universe would be able to resist it. Plants, and all of their structures, including leaves and fruits, would grow incredibly large, and animals would slowly become deformed as the effect took place, while also, as would be found out incidentally, rendering them unpalatable and borderline inedible to most living organisms. This process would be extremely harmful to the host, while providing Xenochroma with what it needs: more and more biomass to consume. Cell by cell, the color will consume the carbon present in its host, using it to reproduce its own crystalline structure through a process similar to mitosis, later sequestering its internal humidity to return to the ground once again. As a result of this process, the host would stop moving, slowly turning into a lifeless husk, quickly dispersing into dust at the lightest touch. These same effects were, unfortunately, also present in many of the humans affected by this alien organism, although some of them were rather subtle. Any humans that were not immediately devoured by Xenochroma were found to have eventually been infected by this microorganism traveling through water droplets floating in the air. Being present in much lower quantities, the effects of the infection were much more subdued, apparently inducing a disruption of the organism's electrical signals. Infected individuals would begin experiencing hallucinations, becoming despondent and disconnected from reality. That is, at least, before some of the other symptoms began manifesting in their bodies. At first, we thought this to be a simple side effect of the organism's dispersion process, but it was much more than that. It was just the beginning of the next phase of its life cycle. All biomatter that had not initially been consumed by the organism would be gathered in a single place, where it would be used to build a secondary cocoon made of still living biomass. Yes, still living. The plants and animals used to do this will be kept alive, despite the terrible state they will find themselves in. Many times, these beings would fuse together as the cancerous cell growth induced by the Xenochroma would cause them to grow and regenerate over one another. While it is hard to know how intentional this is, the psychological effects present in the humans infected cause them to hide and huddle together, only making this process of building the cocoon even easier for the colony. Once enough biomass had been obtained, the organism will use its own gamma radiation to burn it away, producing enough thrust to send these microorganisms into space, with many different clusters traveling in different directions. This is not always successful, but strugglers need only to repeat the process and try anew. Now, talking from an evolutionary standpoint, if we consider the entire meteoric cocoon to have contained a colony of identical, so to speak, genotypes, it makes sense they would cooperate and allow their specific genotype to survive and thrive. There is, of course, a possibility that not all Xenochroma clusters will find a suitable environment to thrive on, but the sheer volume of microorganism clusters produced and sent up to space still makes this a viable strategy. Twice has this organism visited our planet, and the danger of stragglers remaining here has been a constant source of worry ever since. The first of the two impact sites has since been trapped under a vast artificial lake, which was afterwards isolated from underground sources of water, potentially rendering any stragglers inert. But measures are still being taken to ensure the situation is safe. Gamma radiation levels on both sites are constantly monitored to make sure no Xenochroma activity is present in the sites, and methods to potentially stop the spread of the organism are being studied as we speak, should the need to use them ever arise. And that's it for Speculative Biology look into the color out of space. This has been a really fun Halloween season, and I felt something as out there as this Lovecraftian entity, one of the few that fit the full meaning of the concept, was a good thing to finish it on. And the idea of a color never seen before was a fun nut to crack, since the idea of a wavelength not in the visible light spectrum, but that we can still see, is rather mind-melting as it is. So to take on this we used magenta, a famously extra spectral color, meaning it's not in the visible light spectrum, but that we perceived through a mix of other wavelengths, as well as using gamma radiation, a very damaging wavelength that we cannot perceive at all. And of course, this gamma radiation informed the rest of the biology of this organism, which was an interesting process since Crafty Boy over here wasn't really thinking of how this creature worked as he lovingly crafted this tale. But the challenge of it was a big part of the fun. Well, I hope you had fun with this Halloween lineup, and please tell me which of these spooked you the most. Here's a thank you to everyone out there who wanted to see this episode, as well as any Lovecraftian stuff too. And also, thank you to our researchers and research associates who support us through Patreon and YouTube memberships, and who voted for this episode in our polls. Remember, you too can join in if you want to support our channel, and you get some nice perks too, like seeing all of our creatures and videos ahead of time and helping mold them into shape. Or you can also like, subscribe, or write a comment telling me any type of creature you would like me to give the Spekibo treatment in the show. Any of those really help the channel a lot. Thank you all for watching. I hope you're having a really fun Halloween season, and see you next time on the Speculative Wildlife Research Center. Hey, fun fact. Did you know Lovecraft's voice is said to have been high-pitched, having a flat nasal quality, and a noticeable Rhode Island accent? Meaning he likely sounded like this.
Hey Lois, remember that time when I beheld horrors behind human comprehension?